They say there is nothing purer than a child's mind, free from cynicism, from rigid logic, from the noise of the adult world. They live in a place that most of us have forgotten, a place where the line between dream and reality is as thin as a veil. But what if, in that place, they can see things that we cannot? What if their bad dreams are more than just night terrors? What if they are reports, warnings, sent from that mysterious place about the dangers of our world of concrete and steel? The records I'm opening today focus on warnings that come from the most unexpected of sources, our children. I spoke with two fathers, both practical, logical men, who had their realities turned upside down by the inexplicable intuition of their sons. What you are about to hear, in their own words, are two stories about how a child's bad dream and a teenager's gut feeling became the only thing standing between a family and tragedy. They are proof that sometimes the most important voice to listen to is not that of reason, but that of innocence. Story 1. The car that cried. My name is Mark. I'm a project manager for a construction company. My life is schedules, blueprints, and budget meetings. I manage logistics. I solve problems. I'm the guy who believes that if you can't measure it, it doesn't exist. My son Leo is 4 years old. He believes in closet monsters, talking squirrels, and that the moon is made of cheese. We live in different worlds. But one Tuesday morning, his world crashed into mine and saved my life. It started like any other day. A frantic search for a matching pair of tiny socks, a minor negotiation over which cartoon to watch, and the strategic placement of broccoli in his lunchbox, knowing it would return untouched. I was running late, as usual, juggling my briefcase, my coffee, and trying to get Leo's shoes on. He was quiet, too quiet. He was sitting at the kitchen table, pushing a toy car back and forth, but his eyes were distant. "You okay, buddy?" I asked, wrestling with a shoelace. He looked up and his eyes were huge, like he'd just seen a ghost. "Daddy," he whispered, his voice shaky. "I had a bad dream." This was standard procedure. I knelt down, ready for the usual report on shadowy figures or giant spiders. What was it about this time? "Your car," he said, and the way he said it made the hairs on my arms stand up. It wasn't just a dream he was recounting. It was a memory. It was crying, Daddy. A big, loud, screaming cry. And the red light was mad, but the car wouldn't stop. It just kept going faster and faster. I felt a flash of irritation. A crying car? A mad red light? I had a huge meeting in an hour. It was just a dream, Leo. A silly dream. The car doesn't cry, you know that. I tried to ruffle his hair to break the spell, but he flinched. "No," he shouted, and this time there were tears welling up. It was crying. The wheels were crying. "Please check." "It, Daddy. Please!" He was genuinely terrified. It was a different kind of fear than his usual monster under the bed stuff. This was raw, and it unsettled me. He clung to my leg, refusing to let go. To calm him down, to get out the door, I made a promise I had no intention of keeping. Okay, buddy, I'll be extra careful. I'll get it checked soon." That was enough to get him into his car seat. But as I drove him to daycare, I kept glancing at him in the rearview mirror. He wasn't talking or singing. He was just staring out the window, his face pale, his little hands clenched. The feeling stayed with me. All morning at work, I couldn't shake it. During the budget meeting, while my boss was droning on about material costs, all I could hear was Leo's little voice. The wheels were crying. I tried to rationalize it. He'd probably seen a cartoon where a car had a face and cried. Kids mix things up. It's normal, but the raw, primal fear in his eyes, that wasn't normal. It felt transferred, like he was showing me a fear that wasn't his. Around 2 p.m., I was staring at a spreadsheet, and the numbers started to blur. The image of my SUV running a red light, just like in his dream, flashed through my mind. I felt a sudden cold jolt of adrenaline, as if it had actually happened. My heart hammered against my ribs. That was it. I couldn't work. I was a mess, all because of a 4-year-old's nightmare. I felt completely insane, but the feeling was stronger than my logic. What if? That tiny, poisonous question. What if he was right? I called my wife, Sarah. "Hey, did Leo seem weird to you this morning? He had this really intense nightmare about the car." She paused. "He was quiet," she admitted. "But honey, he's 4. His dreams are his reality right now. Don't let his imagination get to you." She was being logical, but her logic didn't help the cold knot in my stomach. On my way home, I saw the sign for Mike's Auto Repair. I almost drove past. Don't be an idiot, Mark, I told myself. You're a grown man. It was a dream. I was halfway past the entrance when my hands, acting on their own, yanked the wheel. The car swerved into the lot. It felt like I wasn't the one driving. I sat in the car for a full minute, feeling my face flush with embarrassment. Then I got out. A big guy with a friendly smile, Mike, came out from the bay. I felt like a complete fool. "Hi," I said, trying to sound casual. "I need a quick look-see. Brakes, maybe?" No real reason, just a gut feeling. I couldn't bring myself to say. My 4-year-old had a dream. "Sure thing," he said, no judgment in his eyes. A gut feeling is usually the best check engine light there is. Pull it up on the lift. I sat in the dingy waiting room for 20 minutes. The smell of oil and old coffee thick in the air. I scrolled through emails on my phone, feeling more ridiculous by the second. I was wasting time and money because of a toddler's imagination. Mike came back in, wiping his hands on a rag, but he wasn't smiling anymore. His face was grim. "So," he said, his voice low and serious, "tell me about this gut feeling you had." I shrugged, my heart starting to beat a little faster. "I don't know. Just felt like I should check the brakes." He shook his head slowly, looking me right in the eye. "Let me rephrase. Who told you to bring this car in today?" The directness of the question threw me. I took a breath. My son. He's 4. He had a bad dream." Mike stared at me for a long moment and then let out a low whistle. "Well, you need to go home and give your son a damn medal, or a pony, whatever he wants." He motioned for me to follow him. He led me under the lift, into the greasy twilight under my own car, and pointed a powerful flashlight up at the front right wheel assembly. "Look." I looked. I'm no mechanic, but I could see it clearly. A dark, wet stain was spreading from a braided metal hose, glistening under the light. The hose itself was almost completely severed, hanging on by just a few threads of metal, dripping brake fluid onto the floor. "That's your brake line," Mike said, his voice echoing slightly in the garage. "Corroded straight through. You probably lost most of your fluid on the drive over here. Another hard stop, maybe 2. The kind you make when a light turns yellow, and that pedal would have gone straight to the floor. No brakes. Nothing. I just stared, my mouth dry. I thought about the steep hill on the interstate I take every day to and from work. I thought about the busy intersection at the bottom of it, the mad red light. My blood ran cold. The screaming cry Leo had described. It must have been the sound of the tires, skidding without brakes. "You didn't just humor your son," Mike said, turning off the flashlight, leaving us in the dim light. "You're standing here, alive because of him. You dodged a bullet, my friend, a big one. I paid the bill in a daze. The drive home was in a loaner car, and I don't think I went over 30 miles per hour. That night, when I put Leo to bed, I held him a little tighter, for a little longer. He'd forgotten all about the dream. He was already talking about talking squirrels again, but I would never forget. I don't know what happened that day. I don't know if he saw the future, or if an angel whispered in his ear. I just know that my world of logic and blueprints now has a very large, very real space in it for the unexplained. So I have to ask anyone listening, especially parents, have you ever been stopped in your tracks by something your child said? A fear that made no sense, a comment that was eerily specific. Don't just dismiss it as imagination. Listen, really listen. Their world may be closer to the truth than ours. A child's dream is a pure channel. It's unfiltered, unburdened by logic or the fear of judgment. Mark, in the end, chose to listen to that pure signal. But what happens when we get older? When that pure channel gets clogged with the debris of life, logic, cynicism, and perhaps the most powerful force of all, social pressure? Does the signal change? Does it become quieter, more difficult to trust? The next account I recorded comes from that very battleground, the mind of a teenager. It's a story not about a clear, vivid dream, but about its older, more confusing cousin, the gut feeling, a nagging, persistent sense of dread that has to fight against the powerful need to belong. Story 2, the gut feeling. My name is Ethan. I was 17 when it happened, and to be honest, I feel like I aged a decade in a single weekend. Before that, my biggest problems were calculus homework and figuring out how to talk to a girl in my history class. My world was small, and the most important thing in it was my friends, Jake, Sam, and Noah. We'd been a unit since middle school, And the senior year trip to Jake's uncle's cabin in the mountains, that was supposed to be our crowning achievement. Our legendary weekend before we all scattered for college. We'd been planning it, obsessing over it, for 6 months. The Friday of the trip arrived with that perfect, crisp autumn air. I remember waking up feeling a buzz of excitement. I had my bag mostly packed, a checklist of junk food and video games ready to go. The plan was simple. Jake would pick us all up in his old SUV, the Beast, as he called it, right after school, and we'd be at the cabin by sunset. It was supposed to be perfect. The feeling started around noon, during lunch in the noisy cafeteria. It wasn't a big, dramatic event. It was small. I was telling a joke to Sam, and in the middle of the punchline, this cold wave washed through my stomach. It was like I'd swallowed a mouthful of ice water. The feeling passed in a second, but it left a strange, heavy residue behind, a knot of anxiety that had no name. I chalked it up to a bad slice of cafeteria pizza and tried to ignore it, but it didn't go away. Through my afternoon classes, the knot tightened. It was a vague sense of dread, a low-frequency hum of wrongness that I couldn't pin on anything. It wasn't like being sad or nervous. It was an alien feeling, an unwelcome guest in my body. When the final bell rang, I didn't feel the usual rush of weekend freedom. I just felt heavy. Walking to my locker, the thought of getting in Jake's car, the very thing I'd been looking forward to for months, didn't bring excitement. It brought another wave of that cold, nauseating dread. I went home and stood in my room staring at my half-packed duffel bag. My phone buzzed. It was Jake. "Dude, I'm 5 minutes out. Get ready. The mountains are calling." His text was full of emojis and exclamation points. It felt like it was from another universe. I sat down on my bed, the phone heavy in my hand. My body felt like it was filled with lead. Every part of my rational brain was screaming, "What is wrong with you? This is the trip you've been waiting for. Stop being weird." But the feeling in the pit of my stomach was screaming louder. It was a primal, physical sensation. A visceral no. It wasn't a thought. It was a command that seemed to come from my bones. I knew, with a certainty that defied all logic, that I could not get in that car. I called him back, my hand shaking slightly. "Hey man, Ethan, get out here. The Beast is thirsty for adventure." Jake's voice was pure, unfiltered happiness. It made what I was about to say feel like a betrayal. I don't think I can go, Jake." The silence on the other end was deafening. "What? What do you mean you can't go? Is it your parents? Are you grounded?" "No, they're fine with it. I don't know how to explain it, man. I just have a really, really bad feeling about this trip." I had never said anything so lame in my entire life. I could practically hear him rolling his eyes through the phone. "A bad feeling? Dude, are you serious? Is this a joke? We've been planning this forever. Sam and Noah are in the car. They're flipping me off for you." I could hear them laughing and shouting my name in the background. "I'm not joking," I said, my voice quiet, which only made it sound more pathetic to my own ears. My gut is just screaming at me not to go. I can't explain it. It just feels wrong. Really wrong. "So you're gonna bail on us? On the trip of the year? For a gut feeling?" The disappointment in his voice was like a physical punch. "Don't be lame, Ethan. Stop overthinking and get in the car." "I'm sorry," I said, and I truly was. I felt like the worst friend on the planet. "I can't. You guys have fun, okay? Seriously, just be safe on the mountain roads." I hung up before he could argue anymore, my face burning with shame. The next few hours were miserable. I unpacked my bag, putting everything back in its place, feeling like a total loser. My phone blew up with texts. From Jake, "Unbelievable. We'll send you a postcard from Epic Town." From Sam, "Lame." From Noah, I watched their social media stories. A video of them laughing, driving away from our town, the empty seat where I should have been. A picture of them stopping for burgers. Each post was a fresh wave of FOMO and regret. I had betrayed my friends and was missing out on the best weekend of my life because my stomach felt weird. I almost called them a dozen times to say I'd changed my mind, that I'd get my parents to drive me up the next morning. But every time I picked up the phone, the cold knot in my stomach would twist, a silent, stubborn reminder. So I didn't. The next morning I woke up feeling empty. The feeling of dread was gone, replaced by a dull certainty that I had ruined my friendships over nothing. I was scrolling through my phone, seeing no new updates from the guys. When my mom called me downstairs, the look on her face, I knew instantly. It wasn't a parent. It was Sam's older sister on the phone. Her voice was flat, hollowed out by shock. "Ethan, there was an accident." The words hung in the air. Time seemed to slow down. She told me what happened. Late last night, on one of the winding, unlit roads up the mountain, a deer had darted out in front of the car. Jake swerved. The beast's tires hit a patch of loose gravel on the shoulder of the road. The car had spun out of control, hit a guardrail, and rolled down a small wooded embankment. She said they were lucky. A passing truck had seen their headlights disappear and had stopped to help. No one was killed, but it was bad. Sam had a broken leg and 3 fractured ribs. Noah, a shattered collarbone and a bad concussion. And Jake had a serious back injury. They were all in a hospital hours away, a long, painful recovery ahead of them. After I hung up, I went back to my room and just sat there, in the silence. The feeling wasn't relief. It wasn't an "I told you so." It was a deep, chilling, hollow wave of guilt and gratitude, all mixed together. I couldn't explain my feeling. I still can't. It wasn't a dream. It wasn't a vision. It was just a certainty, a knot in my stomach that saved me. I visited them in the hospital a few days later. They weren't angry anymore. We just sat there, in the quiet of the hospital room, and Jake, from his bed, just looked at me and said, "You knew, man. How the hell did you know?" And for the first time in my life, I didn't have an answer. So I ask anyone who's ever been in my shoes, have you ever had to choose between being a good friend and listening to that quiet, nagging voice inside? That gut feeling that makes you look crazy? That makes you the butt of the joke? I'm telling you, listen to it. It might be the most honest friend you've got. A dream and a gut feeling. 2 manifestations of the same phenomenon, coming from 2 sons at completely different stages of life. The 4-year-old, his channel of communication still pure, received a clear, symbolic image, almost a dark fable about a car that cried. The 17-year-old, his mind already more skeptical and with social pressure weighing on his shoulders, received the warning the way we adults usually do, as an inexplicable anxiety, a knot in the stomach, a visceral no that fights against all logic. What these stories suggest to me is that perhaps this connection, this antenna for danger, never truly disappears. It just changes frequency as we grow older. The clarity of childhood is replaced by the confusion of adult life, but the signal, for those willing to feel it, is still there. Both fathers in these stories made the most difficult decision, to trust their sons against their own common sense. And both sons are alive because of it. But as I investigated the details, a loose thread bothered me. The coincidence. 2 different premonitions, both about car failures, with sons as the source. Was it just a common theme, or something more? I decided to dig deeper into the specifics of the vehicles, and that's where I found the impossible connection. Mark's family SUV, a new model, and Jake's old SUV, over a decade its senior, were manufactured in the same plant in Ohio. More than that, using the VIN numbers, I discovered they were assembled in the exact same production week, 12 years apart. Intrigued, I found an obscure online forum for retired auto engineers. There, a former designer from that plant mentioned a secret abandoned project. During those 2 specific weeks, the company tested a new, experimental steel alloy in the chassis of a few vehicle batches. The alloy was lighter and cheaper, but it had a bizarre property. Under stress, it emitted a unique, almost imperceptible, ultra-low frequency resonance. Tests showed this. Resonance could, in rare cases, interfere with electronic systems, like the ABS brakes in Mark's car, and could even be perceived by certain individuals as a feeling of vertigo or nausea. Ethan's gut feeling. The project was deemed dangerous, and the reports were buried. The premonitions were not just psychic. They were a sensitivity to a silent scream that the very metal of the cars was emitting. We try so hard to protect our children from the monsters in the dark. Maybe we should listen when they warn us about the monsters we build in the light.